So an overview, just so everybody understands where the sheriff's office is and what it is, how it's different and how it's the same as like local police departments, because there are some differences, but as an overview for the sheriff's office in Polk County, which is over our jail, and my office is in Dallas. And part of the sheriff's office, we have two different sections. So we have our patrol side and then we have our jail. So there's people that work in both of those disciplines that don't necessarily work, like they can't just be plopped in on the other division at a whim. There's certain training for each track of type of employee. So there are a variety, at least in sheriff's office, there's a variety of jobs that might not be available in other police departments if that's something you're interested in doing. So within the patrol side of the sheriff's office, we have just about 30 police officers, deputy sheriffs. That's one difference. We call them deputies instead of police officers. They are police officers in the grand scheme of things, but our roles are a little bit different. Things that a deputy does out on patrol is the same things as city police departments might do, like, just responding to 911 calls or responding to disputes, fights, that kind of stuff, child abuse and other neglect issues that pop up. And then we also do, in addition to that, things that cities don't do. So part of the sheriff's job, and it's listed out in state law about what we're supposed to do. And one of those things is we have to provide court security. So we do provide court security. We provide a civil process service. So like subpoenas or restraining orders, stalking orders, anything that comes from the court that needs to be delivered to a person, we do that as well. There's a variety of things within that civil realm that we do, but it is primarily serving papers to people. That is just a statutory requirement of the sheriff. And then we're also required to have a search and rescue team, which we do within our patrol section, but we do it a little different, where we add some of our corrections deputies, the folks from the jail, into that program, just because we're not big enough to fully support one on our own on this side, on the patrol side. Also within the patrol side, we have a variety of other jobs that aren't police officer positions. And most of these will be in other police departments and sheriff's offices. So you don't necessarily have to be a police officer. A lot of the times, people only associate the sheriff's office or police department with the sworn personnel, which is the actual police officers but for those police officers to work and for their positions to be effective, you have to have the other side of it that helps with the process. So we have in our patrol side, we have about 12 staff that aren't police officers, that are civilians, and it's a career that you can get into. Just depends on what you're looking to accomplish. In our jail, we only have, and it'll vary between jails, but in our jail, we only have 3 non-police officer positions, and all the rest of them are law enforcement. So also on patrol, we also deal with animals. So not every police department or sheriff's office deals with animals, but we do, mainly dogs, but then we don't deal with cats. Cats aren't in our wheelhouse, but we do deal with livestock issues, because counties, sheriff's offices are typically, they handle things outside of city limits, of any city limit. So out in the country, but then there's some sheriff's offices that are primarily urban. So it kind of feels like a police department, even though it's a sheriff's office. That doesn't mean that we can't do or don't do things within a city limits, but by design, if a 911 call comes in for someone that lives inside the city, that's going to primarily go to the city police department first, and then go to the sheriff's office second. But some agencies and some areas are a little bit different than that. In our jail, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot one other thing on patrol. We also deal with marine, like waterway related things. So we have a marine program. We have a couple of boats. We have jet skis, some other aquatic devices that we use too. So that is something that is under the sheriff's office. You're not going to find that at many police departments, but some across the state do, the bigger ones like Portland, and really Portland's the only one that has an actual marine program like that is year-round, that is a requirement of them just because of the city up there. Down here, we just have the Willamette River. That's what we patrol. There's 42 miles of river that we patrol. And then within the patrol side, there's 744 square miles that we cover. So the whole county of Polk. In the jail, we have 195 beds inside our facility. Jails are different. The one in Polk County is different than every other one in the state of Oregon. We're able to run the jail with 5 staff members. So whether we have 200 inmates or we have 100, the same amount of staff is needed. We don't sit in blocks like you might see on TV or something like that, where you're in a block or a pod, maybe what they call it. But it's not where you're in there the whole time. The way we do things, we always move around, so we're always walking. And we just are continually doing that throughout the facility versus some and most jails have the pod. It's called direct supervision, where they're in the pod with the inmates all the time. We don't do that here, just based on the way the jail is set up. And then within the jail, we have 2 civilian jobs that operate our control room, which basically runs the jail. So they are the heart and soul of the jail. They open doors, they answer phones, they deal with inmates through a speaker. They make sure all the deputies get to where they're going all the time. And they got to be pretty efficient, because one person in the control room can really run the whole jail, even though it's 200 beds and it's a relatively large facility. The only other civilian position we have, which are existing in most jails, is a program specialist. So that person provides, or at least coordinates, programming for the inmates. So whether that is like Alcoholics Anonymous or NA, church services, all different religions that we offer. They also deal with the inmate phones, and then also any other like educational things that we do within the facility. They coordinate and bring those people in to be able to provide that to the inmates. That's a full-time job and a half essentially, but we have one person that does that right now. Does anybody have any questions regarding just kind of a general overview of a sheriff's office, and then we'll talk about some of the hiring issues.
Yeah, I have a question for you, Mark.
Sure.
So for those getting out of high school who are thinking about possibly going to Chemeketa or somewhere else that has a program to become an officer, if they're not entirely sure that they want to...
I'm not hearing you if you're talking. I don't know.
Can you hear me now? Let's see.
I can hear him. Mark, can you hear me? It must be on his end.
Can you guys still hear me though?
Yes. Let's see. Brand, can you hear me?
Okay.
I can hear you. Can you hear us now, Mark?
How about now?
We can hear
I
you.
can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can't hear. I lost all sound here.
Well, we have chat. So if you have a question, you can type it in chat for now.
There we go. Well, all right. Got that working sort of.
Oh, you can hear us now?
I can hear you now. My earbuds must have died. I don't know.
Awesome. Okay, so to recap what I was asking, so for students who are graduating high school who are looking at the possibility of going to Schmecada to look at a career in law enforcement, you talked about these positions that are non-law enforcement or civilian jobs. Is there opportunities, not just at Polk County, but is there like part-time opportunities for them to look at so that they can come in and kind of get a feel for like really what they would be signing up for? Because I know a lot will go and do the program, and programs vary on where they go, but then they finish and they go, oh, I didn't actually want to do this side of law enforcement. I wanted to do something more admin. So is there opportunities for people graduating high school, or is it more like you need to be 21 due to any kind of restrictions?
So this will be where it varies a lot by agency. So for instance, some agencies have cadet programs, which we did at one point. We don't currently, but it's in the works to come back. That's anybody 16 and older, so you can do it before they even get out of high school. But it also goes up through your 21st birthday. So it covers that whole gambit. While you're going to school, you can do that. Instead of kind of an alternative we had was, since we got rid of the cadet program, we had another volunteer group that we lowered the age limit to 18. So it's called the Sheriff's Auxiliary, essentially is what it's called. And they do a variety of different things in the jail or on patrol. And all you got to be is 18. So for that. But reserve programs are available too. A lot of agencies have reserve programs, but that's going to be for those 21 and older. So that's going to be kind of during college, to get firsthand experience, basically doing the same job to test it out before you commit. We offer practicums too. So I know through Schmecada, we do get requests for it's about an 80-hour, at least that's what they've done in the past, about 80 hours of work time. So you can come over, and then we kind of divide it up just to give you, the whole idea is to give you a broad experience of what the different things are within the agency. So we put you in the jail for some and some on patrol. So
awesome.
Search and rescue teams are volunteer as well. So that's another way people get in, and you can be 16 years old at the bottom end of that, so you can get in. But there is more training that's required for the search and rescue portion. It's about probably a 3-month process, and it's a couple nights a week and maybe a weekend or two. So that's kind of the commitment ahead of time. But for like our auxiliary team, there's maybe 40 hours of training that we put you through to be able to do the jobs that those positions do. So that's a way to get in, get your foot in the door. That's the way I did it. I started when we had our cadet program, and so I was 16 when we started that. And then when I was 20, I got hired because our non-certified positions, so our civilian positions, all you have to be is 18. You don't have to be 21 like you do for a police officer position. So I put in for a job in our records section. So when I was 20, and got hired when I was 20. And then from there, I transferred to our jail to a civilian job and did one within there for 1.5 years or so before I became a deputy. So I really saw both sides of our, we call them both sides of the street, because they're literally one's on one side of the street and our patrol's on the other side. So that is one way to get in and figure out one way, what you want to do. Because I would see how that would be not necessarily super, you may not be excited about the fact that you went to school because you want to be a police officer or a corrections officer or whatever. Then you get to that point, you're like, this is not what I want to do. I'd rather get you ahead of time and get you some exposure to see what you want or don't want within your career. All right, so let's talk about hiring. The hiring process we'll start with police officer or corrections jobs first. The way this works is if you're 21, there are state mandated functions that we have to do for testing. There's a written test, and the written test covers math, reading comprehension, writing, and a couple scenario-based generalized questions. You don't need to know anything about law enforcement ahead of time. It's more about evaluating how you think, and not necessarily, you don't need to know every ins and outs of police work. That's not the intent. It's about to see if you can logically and critically think about the process that you're in. The written test is something that we use to help kind of weed out potential people that may not be a good fit, or they just have to have that basic equivalency for those areas within the test. So the test doesn't occur until after you put the application in, so putting the application is first, and then the written test is second for us, and then part of that written test, the other half of the day is a physical test. So it's called the ORPAT, and it's a kind of like an obstacle course. It's not like a long distance running or anything like that. When I first started, we had to do a certain number of sit-ups, and we had to run a mile and a half within X amount of time. Those standards have gone away and gone to this ORPAT training, and it's in an abbreviation, but it's ORPAT. So if you looked up on Google, you could look for the Oregon Physical Abilities Test is what it's called, and you could see what that looks like. But it involves jumping, like you're simulating clearing, like jumping a ditch or climbing over a fence, about simulating dragging someone. So basically you got to drag a dead weight around. And then there's a few other stair climbing and a few things like that. So it is a very it doesn't look very, I guess it doesn't look that bad until you start doing it. And you realize how quickly and how underestimated you did when you looked at that, because it is quite actually taxing. It's not as easy as it looks. So, but that is the same for any police officer position in any agency. That's a state function, and so is the test. If you pass both of those, then you would come to an interview phase where we would have an interview panel, typically 3 to 4 or 5 people on the interview panel. They'll ask you just a wide range of questions, nothing that you have to specifically know about law enforcement, however, it'd be a good idea. It's more about that critically thinking and to see how you come to those decisions or answers that you made. So it's more about personality, in my opinion, than it is about, straight up knowledge about the field. Because we can teach you the knowledge, but we can't teach you a different personality, because some personalities just don't mesh with law enforcement. They don't. So if you pass that part of it, you typically move on to the next phase, and the next phase is backgrounds. When I say background, you might have, if you have a job currently, you might have been exposed to a background check. What most employers do with background checks aren't what we call a background check. We send a police officer, typically a detective, and they interview neighbors. They get on, like social media accounts. They really take a deep dive into you as a person, and your habits and all the things that we're looking for to show us that you're going to be a good employee. With the background, it typically can take from a month to 2 to 3 months, sometimes depending on the agency. Some agencies string it out, sometimes 6 months. We typically try to get it done in under a month, just because I don't necessarily want to lose the applicant that has put in for it, and I don't want to lose them to another agency who does a quicker background. So I try to get my backgrounds done a lot quicker than most, but it can take several months to get hired. The process is meant to be long. It's meant to be very intrusive, just because we want to make sure we hire the right people for the job and for this career. So if you pass the background, that's when we would actually give you the final offer. And so what we call a final offer, you'd come in and typically you do an interview with the chief or the sheriff or whoever it is at your agency. It's called the chief's or sheriff's interview. It's the last part of it, where the chief or sheriff has to make a decision, whether based on the background and all this stuff, and an interview, basically another interview with you, if you're the right person for the job. For the non-certified positions, we still do a background. Maybe not quite as extensive, but it still would be much more than just applying for a regular job, at somewhere that does a background check. It's not the same thing. And then they would do background, they would do an interview, and the job would be offered pretty much right then. It's relatively quick. The key difference is, so with a non-certified position, there's no further training or anything that's required. We like to provide training to those people, but it's not a requirement of their job, unlike police officers and corrections deputies too. Within 1 year of you getting hired as a police officer or a certified position, a police officer type position, you have 12 months to get to the police academy. That's the only way you can get into the police academy. You can't just go pay for it yourself and do it on your own. You have to be essentially sponsored by an agency, and then the agency picks up that cost at the academy to train you. You get paid while you're in the academy. For police, it's 16 weeks, so 4 months. And for corrections, it is 8 weeks, so it's a little less, but still covers a lot of the same material. They give you everything. It's meant for an entry-level position with little to no knowledge or background of the profession. So they give you everything that you should need to be able to graduate. And then after the 4 months, for the police side, you come back. We typically try to send you to the police academy relatively quickly when we first hire you. So that when you come back, then you have another 12 weeks or so of field training where you're riding one-on-one with a deputy, or we call them a coach, to be able to just work you through the process and check all the boxes to make sure you know and understand what your job is. But that can last 16 weeks too. So it really kind of just depends on the level of knowledge that person has. You come back from the corrections academy, you still have 12 weeks of training. The training period is the same amount on both of our sides of our divisions. Just the academy is a little less time. So for those two fields, for the law enforcement or corrections, after the initial training and field training that you're doing, you then have yearly requirements that are by the state that order you basically to do X, Y, and Z every year. And so if you don't do that, then your certification won't get renewed the next time it's up for renewal. There's no cost or anything to any of that. It's all on the agency. But it's in our best interest as an employer to make sure you have the tools you need to do your job, so that we haven't wasted all of our money essentially hiring and training you to then turn around and get rid of you if you're not going to work out. That's why we do a lot of the screening on the front end of things, so that we know that we're getting a viable candidate that will likely pass all of our requirements. Typically with police jobs, your probation, so you have probation for the first 18 months. During that 18 months, you can be let go for any reason. typically, like I said before, we try to get you to where we need you to be because we don't want to turn around and have to rehire and do backgrounds and all on a whole nother group of people. So we try to get you there. We don't like to fail, but there's been a few times over the years that you hire somebody and they just don't work out, and so you got to let them go because it's important that we uphold our values and our to our not only our agency but to the communities too. Every community is going to be a little different, and it really does matter the community you live in, the type of environment, whether you're in a city or a county, because the main difference between a police department and a sheriff's office is the sheriff is elected. So elected by the people of the county as a whole. And then police chiefs are hired by their city council. So the only boss I have are about 80,000 people that live in Polk County. A police chief's boss is the city manager. So there's a little bit different level of oversight that occurs. It's just a different position. Not all cities have police departments, but most counties, I don't know of a county in Oregon that doesn't have a sheriff's office. It's just going to be, smaller or bigger depending on the county that they're from. Questions about hiring? Anybody?
This was about the earlier when you talked about training and like I guess like the physical test of like being able to jump over like a ditch and stuff like that. Does that continue on as you're a cop? Like once you've been a cop for like 2 years, do you still have to get trained?
So
Like see if you can still do all those tasks, like go over a fence, jump over a ditch.
in theory, with police and corrections jobs, we have ongoing training that we do on a regular basis. We go to the range and shoot several times a year. We do defensive tactics and we do other physical ability stuff. So in our policy, it says you have to be basically fit to do the job. And so that is a requirement of you to keep and maintain that level. I'm sure people can fluctuate a little bit, but if you can't do the job, then you're not guaranteed that position anymore, unless you can prove to them that you can, fix that issue. But yeah, you really do. There are multiple things. Some agencies require you to do the ORPAT every year. Some agencies don't. So it'll vary by agency. But in our agency, we have all these other trainings that we do, in addition to having policy that says you have to be able to, fitness for duty. You got to be able to be fit for duty. And if you're not, you could be let go as well.
Okay, thank
Good
you.
question. Yep.
Mark, something that I learned about when you were sharing the resources with me was the community relations specialist. Could you speak a little bit on that? Because that's, from what I read about it, it's the skills required for it are something that a lot of high schoolers are learning about, and they use a lot of social media and make presentations. So I feel like it's very relevant.
Yeah. And I didn't even I forgot about that position. It's for us, it's relatively new within the last year or so, a little over a year. But a lot of agencies are transitioning to that kind of person, because essentially what they do, any kind of community outreach, whether it's, National Night Out or any really community events that are on a regular basis that we're involved in, that person is the coordinator of getting deputies to the right place. If the deputies are required at that thing. They do press releases. So, they'll craft messages on Facebook. And if you look on our Facebook page, you'll see those press releases. And that's essentially what our community relations person does. Ideally, the person that is in those kinds of positions is similar to what we have. And, you're doing some video work, you're taking pictures, you're, you're able to write a sentence, you're able to write it effectively with, no errors. And then to be able to post that and really market the agency that you work for. Because if we don't have public support, especially in a sheriff's office, because to me, I feel like sheriff's offices are more connected generally than city police departments to the communities that they serve. And so I have to have somebody that is always thinking about sending out a positive message or sending out messages that are important. If we didn't have that position, really the only thing that we would publish are any kind of like major incidents that might come across, shootings and that kind of thing. But for the day-to-day stuff, it's important to have a position like that that can dedicate some of their time to, the various social media sites. Because as you all know, when I first started, we didn't have Facebook and all that. And so you guys growing up with that is a much different dynamic than some of the older people that may not be or too hype on working with Facebook or, TikTok or whatever the other social media, Instagram and whatever else that you want to do. That's why we need that different look, the outside view of a marketing type position. And that's really what it is.
Well, thank you, Mark, for that. Does anybody have any other questions? We'll give it a couple moments here. If not, then Mark, I will thank you for your time and we can all go on with our days.
And I would be more than happy after this. You guys are more than welcome. I'll put my email in the chat. You guys are more than welcome to email me if you have questions, anything like that. More than happy to answer questions or help, guide you in the direction if you're just trying to figure it out. I'm up for that too. So like I said, it's about community and it's about getting the right people to the job that need to be there. And if I can help you get there, that'd be great. So.
Mark, could you speak on, even if in general terms, what the salary looks like, I guess? I know it really does vary based on agencies. But yeah, anything you could provide, because I know it's a big question.
Yeah, it's hard to say that because every agency is different. So just depending on the makeup of that city, whether there's more commercial properties versus residential properties, you're going to see a different tax level. For patrol, for my deputies, they are. Let me grab that real quick. They're a month. They're starting, a little over 4,000 a month and go up to 6,200 a month or so. And for sheriff's offices, they're typically the same for patrol deputies or corrections deputies. So it's the same pay. The civilian staff is going to be a little less than that. And just because of, it's not a, once you get hired, there's no like ongoing training requirements by the state. So their wages are going to be lower. They all have the same benefits though. So, insurance and paid time off and a retirement plan and all that stuff. Those are all the same. It's just the salary is a little higher for certified positions. But one thing in most agencies, I'd venture to guess that most, if not all agencies do provide incentive pay. And what I mean by that is if you have an associate's degree, you can add 4% on top of your monthly pay as incentive pay. So if you have an associate's, you get 4. If you have a bachelor's, you can get 7. And then some agencies offer bilingual pay as well. So if you're fluent for our agency, we do Spanish and sign language. So if you are fluent in either of those, you get an extra 5% incentive pay on top of the education incentive if you have it. Those also apply for civilian staff too. So at least at my agency, that may not be across the board, but my record staff, if they have a bachelor's and associates, they get an extra 4 or 7% on top of their base pay.
That's
And then
great.
obviously too, if there's, we have different levels of rank within each patrol or the jail side. So our deputies, and then we have sergeants that are going to make more than that, than what the corrections deputies or patrol deputies make. And then we have one other level in between that as a lieutenant. So we only have one of those on each side. And then we only have 4 sergeants on each side of the street as well. So not as many, but there's a way to progress up through the ranks. And, if you want to keep earning more money and have different job duties, then that's something that's available in most agencies as well.
Since you're technically a state employee, or to some degree a employee of the government, and you can let me know if you can't exactly answer this, but in terms of benefits, what's something that's different from a private sector job? I know you talked about the retirement fund, so yeah.
Yeah, PERS would be different, than the private sector, but it's heading in the direction that it's going to be very comparable to a private business. The days of PERS where you used to get a guaranteed amount back, which was in the 80s and 90s, that doesn't necessarily exist anymore. So they're kind of transitioning a lot of those over to like 401ks and that kind of thing, which is what you would get in the private sector. But I would say the biggest benefit out of everything that I have is health insurance. So currently I pay, so it wouldn't be any more, at least for my agency. I pay about $300 a month for full family coverage, and it's really good. It's low deductibles, it's all that. It's well worth it, especially if you're starting a family and all that with, if you're having babies or whatever it may be. That is definitely something that as a young kid, I didn't necessarily, put too much stock into initially, because my parents, had insurance and I was able to be on the insurance plan. But having your own, I have realized that while it's not a direct compensation for it, it is definitely a huge benefit that the county or the cities or the state pay for you in addition to your wages. So I think our insurance plans cost about $1,300 a month or so. I only pay $300 of that. So that's a significant benefit, especially when you're coming up and start a family, unless you have medical problems too, or get hurt. That's the other thing. You may not get hurt on duty, but you might get hurt while you're at home on your weekend or something like that, and you want to be able to have that insurance.
Absolutely. As we're getting here towards the end, I'm going to use one more time for one more question. For me, speaking of like retirement age, and I these questions are being sent to me, so I wish I had all the time to think of these, but in terms of retirement age, is there any association to years of service that would help? I know that with PERS, and that's public employee retirement. Yeah. So for those who don't know, that's like after serving a certain amount of time, there's a promise of a certain amount of money in association with how much is being put aside each year. It's a 401k. And you talked a little bit about that, but is there a certain amount of years through service that qualify you to retire with any benefits or something?
So if in our civilian jobs that we have, those fall under just the normal PERS. So typically 30 years of service or 58. But you have to, if you have 30 years and you're 58 years old, then you can retire. You don't take health insurance with you or anything like that, so you got to turn around and buy your own, which is expensive. And so for the certified people, typically like it's 25 years and 50 is when you can retire. But so it's a little less, but we also do shift work. We also deal with some some crazy stuff from time to time. And so there's a lot more stress on this job than there is on a civilian position. So that's really the difference. And that works for corrections or for the police side is 25 years. And if you're, and 50, unless the state decides to change that on us. So.
Yeah, that's great to know though. Especially because I know a lot of people, myself included, know that you're going to deal with a lot of different situations. And speaking about shift work, how often can your schedule change, or like how much does it vary, especially when, you know, you talked about having a family? It can be difficult because you don't have a consistent schedule, right?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, the staff knows what they're going to be working for the next year. The way, and this is probably with most agencies, but not quite all, that based on, because they're all within union, so within a union, and based on their seniority within that union is what determines what shifts you'll be able to take. So if you get into an agency like ours, for instance, my seniority started on day one when I was 20 years old and not in a police position. And then once that's my start date. And so then once you get into police work or corrections, you keep that same seniority date and you get a bid schedules. We do it once a year for the whole remainder of the year. And you get a bid days or nights. And for us, we work 12-hour shifts and we work 6 to 6. So there's a night shift and a day shift. There's no requirement to move off of those shifts throughout the year, but you can choose to do that if you wanted to. But yeah, it definitely, that takes a toll. You got to have an understanding partner in your relationship to be working nights and weekends and holidays, and because you're going to miss stuff, especially when you have younger kids. Most agencies, or I wouldn't say most, at least my agency, we make an effort to, you know, if we have a person on patrol, that if they're able to and there's no calls, they can go take a break or take their lunch at a baseball game and watch their kids. That kind of thing. We promote that kind of attitude. Not all agencies are like that, but it's important because in my agency, we have a lot of young people that have 3 to 5 years of experience. And so they're all growing up. They're all, seems like, having babies at the same time too. And so it's important to be able to have that family kind of dynamic within an organization, but not all do that. So that is something you should, if that perks your interest, that's something you should be paying attention to.